Hi, and welcome back to this week's Parsha Shir on Sefer Netivot Shalom. In Parshas Matos, which is the first of the two Parshios we're going to read this Shabbos, we read about the war with Midian and about what to do with all the spoils of war that they receive. So first we have to learn about how to kosher those utensils, and from this Parsha we learn about Tfilas Kalim and Hechsher Kalim, but then we also learn about how they split up the spoils of war. And part of them were donated to Hashem, part of them were taken by the people. And the pasuk says, "Vayikruvu el Moshe hapkudim asher l'alfei hatzava sarei ha'alafim v'sarei ha'meot." All of the men of war gathered by Moshe Rabbeinu, those who were in charge of the hundreds and those who were in charge of the thousands, all the officers that Moshe Rabbeinu had appointed. Vayomru el Moshe. And they say to Moshe, Avadecha nasu es rosh anshei hamilchama asher biadenu, velo nifkad mimenu ish, vanikrav es korban lashem. We have raised up the heads, meaning we have counted, like the language of the Torah always goes back to. Nasu es rosh means we've counted the heads. We've counted the heads of every one of our military men, all of our anshei hamilchama. We didn't miss one. Lo nifkad mimenu ish. We didn't miscount. We didn't miscalculate. We have it all together. We know exactly how many people. We know exactly how much they collected. We know exactly what the spoils were. Vanikrav korban lashem. Now we're ready to give our portion. We're donating it to the Mishkan, to the Beis Hashem, to Hashem Himself. That's our korban. That's our sacrifice. A little bit later, after the sacrifice is given, the Torah tells us, Anshei hatzava bazazu ish lo, that the men of war, Anshei hatzava, men of the army, bazazu ish lo, they each took what was theirs, what was for them. So the Netivot Shalom asks a logical question. Ra'ui levar inyan beis halashonis halalu, Anshei hamilchama ve'anshei hatzava. We have to figure out why the Torah refers to the men of war with two different titles, Anshei HaMilchama, men of war, and Anshei HaTzava, men of the army. V'lama b'divrei sarei ha'alafim ksiv avadecha nasu es rosh Anshei HaMilchama, v'achar kach ksiv Anshei HaTzava. Why does it say in the case of Anshei HaMilchama that they counted them all, that they raised their heads, and we know each of them were there and accounted for? Whereas by Anshei HaTzava, it doesn't say that, it just says Anshei HaTzava, whoever they were. What exactly is the differentiation between these two titles, and why is it specifically by Anshei HaMilchama that the term Nasu et Rosh, that they counted them, they raised their heads, is used in application to that title as opposed to the Anshei HaTzava title? It seems almost like we're talking about two separate groups of people. What exactly as well is the bazazu ishlo, that they each took the spoils for themselves? L'shem mazeh nichta b'Torah. What do we learn from this particular detail as it's given to us in the Torah? So really three questions over here. Number one, what's the difference between these two references, these two titles, Anshei Milchama and Anshei Tzava, when really they seem to be referring, where they should be referring, to the same group of people? Second question, why is the action of Nasu et Rosh, of counting, of raising the heads, specifically mentioned in the context of Anshei Milchama, not Anshei Tzava? And the third question, why is Bazazu Ishlo, that they each took the spoils for themselves, mentioned at all in the Torah, and why is it mentioned in the context of Anshei Tzava, not Anshei Milchama? V'yesh lomar inyan Anshei Tzava v'Anshei Milchama al derech ha'avoda al pi man da'amar beis ha'Avraham. He says, I can answer this question about the two different titles by introducing you to a thought that was in the Sefer Beis Avraham, in which he tells the story of two great brothers and a machlokes that occurred between them. She'achim hakedoshim, harav hakadosh Rabbi Elimelech v'harav hakadosh Rabbi Zusha, zchusam yagen aleinu, hisvakchu beinehem mehechan tzarech Yehudi lahaschil ba'avodas Hashem. There was a machlokas between Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk and his brother Rabbi Zusha about where a person should begin their pathway in Avodas Hashem. It's very meaningful to learn this particular Netivot Shalom this week, since I had the good fortune last week of traveling with 40 members of our community to go and visit the grave, the kever of Rabbi Elimelech in Lezhensk in Poland. Rabbi Elimelech was a very holy Jew, a leader of the Hasidic movement. Rebbe Elimelech and Reb Zusha were sent in order to transfer and to start Hasidus in Poland. Hasidus really began in the Ukraine with the Baal Shem Tov, and the students of the Baal Shem Tov told us Yaakov Yosef and the Maggid of Mezrich. One of the great students of the Maggid of Mezrich was Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk, as well as Rav Shneir Zalman of Liadi, and as well as Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. All those were third-generation Hasidic masters who spread the Torah of Hasidus to various areas, but most of them were centered in Belarus and the Ukraine, and Rebbe Elimelech and his brother Reb Zusha were sent into Poland, and eventually Rebbe Elimelech arrives in Lezhensk, where we had the honor of visiting his kever. So the machlokas between Rebbe Elimelech and Reb Zusha. What is the machlokas? How a person should really ideally begin in their pathway towards avodas Hashem. How should they begin in their growth? Should a person start by contemplating the absolute awesome greatness of the Creator, of Hashem, and therefore contemplate their own shiflus, their own lowliness of the human being? Or should a person start by contemplating their own lowliness and their own worthlessness, and thereby come to the appreciation of the Gadlus Habore? So is it down, up, or is it up, down, right? This is the machlokas between the two brothers. So what did they do? Nichnasu lishol pi Rabba Marava Kadosh Maggid of Mezrich. They go and they ask the Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezrich, one of the prime students of the Baal Shem Tov. Of course, it's a wonderful machlokas. Both of you are right. There is no right and wrong answer. There are different strokes for different folks. Sometimes it works to start with the lowliness of a human being and contemplate that, and thereby come to appreciation of the greatness and the infinity of God. And sometimes the opposite works. Sometimes you contemplate the infinity of the Creator and then come to realize the lowliness of the human being. But the Maggid tells them that the best way, the most certain way, is to start from low to high, to start by contemplating the lowliness of the human being. However, this pathway of certainty is only for Anashim Gedolim, for great people. What happens if you're filled with iniquity, if you're a faulty person, if you're not a successful person in Avodas Hashem? Shegam achrei shekvar kiblu al atzim harbe meod kabalos chozim v'nichshalim ve'enam yecholim la'amod b'hachlotosehem. That a person, even after trying and making decisions to be better, making decisions to improve, they keep falling over and over, and they keep failing over and over. So what is that person supposed to do? Harei b'matzavam. If that person who's already on such a low level will start their avodas Hashem by looking at their own shiflus, their own lowliness, then it's not going to have any good effect. Actually the opposite. They're going to fall into greater depression, into greater anxiety, because they're going to realize that not only should they think of themselves as nothing, vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they're actually going to realize that they are nothing, that they amount to nothing, that never being successful, that's not going to help them grow, that's going to push them down further. So the Maggid says, of course, the most certain path, that the two paths are both valid. Two paths are both valid for all people who might encounter those paths with greater success or lesser success, depending on the time of their life. But, he says, when you're at tzaddik, when you're already on a very, very high level, the most certain path to take is to focus on the shiflus ha'adam, which leads you to an appreciation of the gadlus habore. But when a person's on a very low level, not in the tzaddik category, but in the regular person category, the person who always fails, the person who keeps trying but never really seems to have great success in avodas Hashem, for them, that's absolutely the wrong pathway. They shouldn't focus on the lowliness of the human being. Rather, that would push them greater, to push them down even more into greater despair. Rather, they should focus on the gadlus habore. But, says there's a problem with that philosophy, says in Netivot Shalom. If a person who's already on a very low level tries to contemplate the gadlus habore, the absolute awesomeness of God, then how are they even going to recognize it? How are they going to come to that great appreciation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu when they're already on such a low level? So he says like this: the idea of contemplating the greatness of the Creator when you're on a very low level is not to realize that there's this giant chasm between you and the Creator who's so great. The opposite is true. When one contemplates, when you're on a very low level, you contemplate the greatness of the Creator, what you're supposed to come to realize, the mussar you're supposed to gain from it, is to think that I am a Tzelem Elokim. I am an emanation of that great infinite divine, of that great God who is so awesome and so mighty and so unparalleled in the world. I am a Chelek Elokam Imal. I'm a piece of Hashem. I have a piece of Hashem in me, so to speak. And therefore I'm a Ben Melech. I'm related and associated to that Godless. And if I'm related and associated to that Godless, then I have the capacity to live up to that level of Godless, to that level of greatness. I have the capacity to be like Hashem. That's an unbelievable realization. For a person who's always falling and always failing and never successful in Avodas Hashem, the very realization that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is awesome and great is itself a realization that you are awesome and great, that you have that capacity, and that you are so connected deep down inside to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you have the capacity for greatness as well. And that's a feeling that lifts a person. Not a feeling that pushes them down, but a feeling that lifts a person, and raises a person, and gives them the hope and the encouragement to be able to continue and to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and eventually rise in the ranks of spirituality. That's the purpose. So, in the end, the Magid of Mezrich solves the machlokus between the two brothers, Rabbi Elimelech and Rabbi Zusha, by saying it depends. Depends on the person. Person is a great tzaddik, then the way for them to start their pathway for greater success in Avodas Hashem is to go with the level of humility, to focus on the fact that they're lowly and that they still have room to grow. And if a tzaddik who's on a very, very high level is able to do that, then by showing that they're really humble and that they're really down to earth and that they really have room to grow, that tzaddik is going to explode even more and more and rise to greater levels because they're going to push themselves to be closer to Hashem. And by doing that, they're going to realize the Gadlus Habore. They're going to come to the greatness of God. But a person who's not a tzaddik, who's on a very low level, if they focus on their humility, they're going to push themselves down so far into such great despair that they're not going to be able to raise themselves up anymore. And therefore, that person should not contemplate their humility. Rather, they should contemplate the Godless of Hashem. But that contemplation of the Godless Hashem is not meant to lead them to the realization, wow, God is so far, I'll never make it. But rather to realize that if God is so great, then I am so great as well, because I am a Chelek Elokam Imal. I have a relationship with that Godless, and I'm a Ben Melech. I'm the son, the daughter, the child of that king of all kings. And therefore I have a name to live up to. I have a reputation to live up to. I have a potential to live up to, and I have the capacity to be able to be successful and to reach that potential and to reach that success and to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the pathway one is supposed to choose. With that in mind, says Netivot Shalom, we could perhaps, al pi drush, understand the reference in our parsha to the Anshe Milchama and to the Anshe Tzava. These are perhaps not just references to the men of war and the men of the army, but to two typologies of a human being. There are some human beings who are on the level of Anshe Tzava. They are already military men. They are military women. They are people, individuals who have already overcome all of their battles of their Yetzer Hara, all the battles with their own spirituality that has been not so successful perhaps, that all their taivos, all the desires of the world that are bringing them down, they've overcome that already. They're done with the milchama. And then there's Anshe Milchama, people who are still very much in the midst of their battle, of their struggles to constantly overcome the Yetzer Hara, to constantly fight against the things that are pulling them down into this world of physicality and try to emerge into the world of spirituality. And that's why the Torah uses two different verbs to describe these sets of people. By the Anshe Milchama, by the people who are still engaged in a deep struggle, people who are on a low level, who are still really fighting against their taivas and their yetzer haras. What does the Torah tell us? Nasu et rosh. They were counted. Their heads were raised. Not only were they counted, says the Netivot Shalom, but their spirits were raised. People on a low level who are on Shem Milchama, really slogging through, trying to fight their yetzer hara, failing over and over. What Hashem did for them, what Moshe did for them, what their leaders did for them, is to raise their heads up, to show them their greatness, to attach them to that vision of the great HaKadosh Baruch Hu is absolutely infinite, and make them realize that they're a Chelek Elokam Imal, and they have what to strive for, they have what to reach for. But by the Anshe Tzava, by the people who already overcome their struggles, they're on great levels of tzidkus, they're already the tzaddikim, they're great religious people. Those people don't need to be reminded of the Gadlus Habore, that they're a Chelok Elokam Imal. Those people actually need Bazazulo. Bazazu from the Lashon of Bizayon. Bizayon means embarrassment or lowliness. That those people actually have to focus on their humility, because the greatness could get to their heads. They focus too much on the fact that they're tzaddikim, they're never going to grow more. But those people are bazazulo. They each have to focus on bizayon. Not bizayon in terms of disgracing themselves, chas v'shalom, but bizayon in terms of lowering themselves, humbling themselves, to make themselves focus and realize that they still have room to grow as well. That you could be the greatest tzaddik in the world and you still have room for improvement in this world. These are the two pathways spoken about by Rebbe Elimelech and Rebbe Zusha. The two pathways pointed out by the Maggid of Mezrich that are appropriate for different kinds of people. They are represented by these two typologies, Anshe Milchama, the struggling people, who need to be reminded of Nasu et Rosh, of their greatness, in order to give them encouragement. And the Anshe Tzava, the people who have already made it, they've already struggled, they're now tzaddikim, who need to be reminded of Bazazulo, of their own humility. And by pushing the tzaddikim to remember their humility, and by pushing those who struggle with lowliness to remember their greatness, then we will push these two groups of people towards greater and greater avodas Hashem. Each of us has our moments where we need to be considered Anshe Milchama, and each of us has our moments when we need to be considered Anshe Tzava. Each of us has our moments when we need to humble ourselves in order to grow, and each of us has our weak moments, our moments of despair, where we need to be reminded of our greatness in order to grow. The key is to know at which moment you need which reminder, because it is ultimately that decision of which thing to remind yourself of that will enable you to reach your greatest success. Shabbat Shalom.